What is up? Happy Thursday. Welcome into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabbar here with Jared Smith. Gerard, how the heck are you? We got week 4 of NFL. We got week 5 of college football. A lot coming at us today.
Yeah, it's a Thursday. We're on opposite sides of the game tonight, but I relented a little bit because I think I'm not as passionate about the Thursday night game as you clearly are. So I actually have a Nerfy on my card today now. You're very listen. A lot of things can be said about Lauren Jabbar. One of them absolutely is passion breeds into you. Very exciting night though. NFL is back. We have college football on the horizon this weekend, and we'll get to all of it. Very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a good week. So talking about our Thursday show, Thursday Night Football Preview. Then we have a little game we like to call Would You Rather when we talk about Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, MVP, giving out 2 names. We're saying, would you rather pick one or the other? And then college football, most to prove heading into this week. There's a couple really big games that are going on, and we're going to break them all down for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's bet it. Presented by Superbook Sports. Let's get into the NFL Thursday Night Football Preview. Week 4, Jared, begins tonight between the Dolphins and the Bengals. And I know our Pickswise Playbook show is going to be posted today. We had a lot to say about Thursday Night Football. But right now, Miami wants to keep their undefeated season alive. Good teams win. Great teams cover. The Dolphins have done both in all 3 games so far this season. They took down the Buffalo Bills last week, brought the heat literally and figuratively. And in my opinion, Mike McDaniel could be the coach of the year at this point. They look really good on both sides of the ball. What are your expectations heading into Thursday Night Football week 4?
Well, let's start with the line move because it's significant. This thing opened 1.5 on the look ahead. And then with all the things that took place over Sunday, and then of course with the Bengals injury situations as well, which we'll get to in a second, this thing hopped over a key number and got all the way to 4. Now we're starting to see a little buyback in the market. I saw the Dolphins go from 4 to 3.5, and it looks like it's hovering in that 3.5 range. If I had to guess, it will close at 4. That would be my guess, because I think we are seeing, at least based off of that initial move, the smart money come in on Cincinnati early in this game. Not as much now that it's been past that key number, but it looks like, based on what the numbers we're looking at here, the percentages are skewing towards Miami very early on. Public's betting Miami, sharps are betting Cincinnati. That being said, there's injuries on both sides that are significant. I'll start with the Bengals. DJ Reader, big man in the middle, very important for Cincinnati's run-stop game. He's out. Lyle Collins, right tackle, questionable with a back issue. Those are 2 things to keep in mind, very important this week, especially because of Joe Burrow's issues on the offensive line as well. For the Dolphins, it's a laundry list. Tua, questionable. Jalen Waddle, questionable. Xavier Howard, questionable. Teron Armstead, questionable. Those are 4 Pro Bowl caliber players. If all 4, I think Tua's going to play. I think Waddle's going to play.
Yeah, Tua's going to play.
I think Howard and Armstead are the ones that I'm questioning. Those are important pieces, obviously, especially Howard defending this Bengals pass attack and Armstead keeping Tua upright. We've seen the offensive line for the Dolphins play pretty well so far. So those are 2 very important pieces. I think the market here is painting a very clear picture. The fact that a 1-2 team that has looked really poor, Cincinnati, is not only favored in this spot, but the line hopped over a key number and got to 4 before we started to see buyback against the team that's 3-0 and has looked fantastic. I think it's pretty obvious who the quote-unquote right side in this game is, but that doesn't mean the Bengals are going to win. They still have to go play it, but I think it's very obvious to me based off of the market move where the steam is heading here.
Yeah, I look at the Bengals and their win last week against the Jets, and yes, maybe they've gotten on track. I'm not bought into it yet, and no one likes Joe Burrow more than I like Joe Burrow. We have a relationship between the Jaburo and the Jabara. I bought his glasses last year. I felt like we had a good thing going heading into the Super Bowl. But again, it's still the Jets. And they had, I think it was 4 turnovers last week, and the Bengals scored 13 points off of those turnovers. So did they turn the corner? I'm not sure. I'm not bought in. Joe Burrow had 275 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. And I know it's 3.5 after their win. That has to do with injuries. It also might have to do a little bit with, the heat that the Dolphins played in, because that was excruciating conditions, having a short week of rest at this point. But I don't know. The Dolphins are rocking right now. They're 14-4 straight up in their last 18 against the Bengals. And they're tied for the league's second best yards per play, 6.4 in the NFL. I feel like this is going to be an under game. I feel really, really good about the Dolphins heading into this one. Let me tell you the other bet that I feel pretty good about is Joe Burrow to throw an interception. And it wasn't plus money a little bit earlier today. It was plus money yesterday. Now it's at minus 102. I'm laying 2 cents for it. I still feel really good about it. I hate that I like this so much because, again, I love Joe Burrow. But back in 2021, he threw an average of around 32 passes per game. He played 16 games, had 14 interceptions. That's basically averaging an interception a game. This season, he's upped his pass attempts about 8 more per game to around 40 through the first 3 weeks. He has thrown 23 interceptions in his 29 career games played, and he's been running for his life. His O-line is providing him absolutely no protection. Over the first 3 weeks, he's been sacked 15 times. That might cause, that's not a stat you love to see, is your quarterback getting sacked 15 times over 3 weeks. But that might cause a couple iffy throws. Maybe he just wants to get out of pressure. I could see him throwing an interception in a game like this with the way that the Dolphins defense pressures the quarterback and the way that the Bengals O-line is playing right now. So why not? Lay a couple cents for it. Joe Burrow to throw an interception. Not my best bet of the day. And I hate that I'm rooting for this tonight, but you know what? I am. It's okay. At this point, though, let's look at some of the odds. The AFC North odds, the Bengals plus 350 to win the AFC North. AFC East odds at this point, Jared. The Dolphins right now plus 225 to win. They're at the top of the division right now. Obviously, the Bills are sitting at 2-1. The Jets and the Pats both at 1-2. Would you bet on any of these teams at this point? Bengals 3.5 to 1 and Dolphins basically 2.25 to 1 to win their respective division.
Well, we bet the Bengals last 2 weeks ago in our futures column at 3 to 1 to win the North. And listen, if you're of the belief that the market is correct and the Bengals win this game tonight, then you could make worse bets than the Bengals to win the AFC North. It's like a slingshot effect. If you bet on a team to win, if you think a team is going to win, you bet their futures that week, and the following week, odds are you're going to be ahead of the market. So I don't have a problem with betting the Bengals to win the AFC North. I wanted to add a couple points to your handicap on Burrow and his offensive line and what the Dolphins could do defensively, because I think there's a little more digging to do in this game. So the Bengals pass block win rate is bottom 5 this year. They have not protected Joe Burrow, and the numbers, the analytics say that. Obviously, our eyes tell us that too. And the Dolphins have been really good at getting after the passer, top 5 in pass rush win rate this year. That's a matchup that absolutely scares me if you're betting the Bengals tonight. Another couple of things to dive into with this game. The one thing I will say about Tua, and this is something to keep in mind as we go forward in time with this new scheme with McDaniel and Tua. Tua right now is the number 2 quarterback in the league in terms of efficiency, and the Dolphins have the highest EPA per play of offense of any team through 3 weeks. But on early downs, those percentages drop significantly. What that tells me, why are early downs important? Early downs is when quarterbacks tend to be the most explosive because the defenses are kind of in betwixt and in between. Are you running it? Are you passing it? To me, a clear indicator of a quarterback that's been a little unlucky is he's really good on late downs, but not on early downs. That tells me, that's a little bit But when it's the opposite and a quarterback is really good overall, but on early downs struggles a little bit more, that tells me that the numbers might not be as solid as where they are. And maybe there's a little bit of regression coming with Tua and this Miami offense. I think it is fair to say that third down success is not sustainable. It's a very volatile statistic. And the one thing I really do like about the Bengals defense, they might have one of the better secondaries in the league that nobody really talks about. The defense overall is 5th in EPA per play and 4th in success rate against the drop back. Awuzie, one of the best corners in the league on the outside. That matchup against either Waddle or Hill is going to be fascinating tonight. And then Mike Hilton in the slot's been fantastic. The safeties, Von Bell and Jesse Bates, have been great. Remember, this is a Bengals team that faced Tyreek Hill twice last year towards the end of the season. Once in the regular season, and then in the AFC Championship game. 6 for 40, 7 for 78 in those 2 games. So they've handled Tyreek Hill. They've been able to figure out a scheme to keep him under wraps a little bit. Overall, this Bengals defense also held Mike McDaniel's Niners offense in check last year. That game was 20-20 going into overtime. The Niners won in overtime on a touchdown, 26-23. So I think there are some positives to go with the Bengals defense here. And again, you mentioned the fatigue factor with the Dolphins defense after being on the field for 90 plays. If Miami rolls into Cincinnati tonight and wins this game, the sky is the limit for them. Every metric, every little indicator is pointing to Cincinnati in terms of just winning the game tonight based off of the market move and the defensive schemes and where I kind of see these teams at this point. If Miami wins this game, I'm a believer. I will be a believer. I'm a little skeptical right now.
This is the week. This is the week if they get it done. And I feel the same way about the Jags playing the Eagles. Week 4, we're going to see a lot from these teams that, hey, are they the real deal? Or are they not the real deal? Are they frauds for 3 weeks? And I feel like those are the 2 teams that I'm really looking at this week because we're all high on the Dolphins. We're all high on the Jags. If they can get it done, enough said. I'm in. I'm bought in. And I'm already bought in on the Dolphins at this point because I'm like all in on their I'll get into it. My best bet of the day. I can't give away the end of the show yet. But you mentioned Mike McDaniel, Jared. Let's get into our new game. We're going to call it Would You Rather? NFL style. I'm giving you 2 names for Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP. You tell me, would you rather have one or the other at this point through a couple weeks of the season? Let's start with Coach of the Year because you mentioned Mike McDaniel. So we're going to go with Nick Sirianni at 3-1 for the Eagles or Mike McDaniel at 5-1 with the Dolphins. At this point of the season, through 3 weeks, both teams 3-0. How are you betting this? Which one would you rather have?
Sirianni. Yeah.
Okay, tell me why.
I like the Eagles team a lot.
You liked him since before the season started.
Yeah. So, first of all, both of these guys meet the criteria that I like to look at for Coach of the Year, which is first or second season, early in your tenure, and high, above expectation. I would put Brandon Staley in that category from last year. First year, we expected him to overachieve. Didn't quite happen. I think when you look at the Eagles roster as a whole, I think they're a little bit more equipped, and I think they're in a better position to win the division. That's a big indicator for me as well. I don't think Miami's going to win the AFC East. I know they just beat the Bills. I still don't think they're going to win the AFC East. I still think Buffalo's better, top to bottom, nose to toes. I think the Eagles, in my opinion, are the best team in the NFC East. And I think if they win the division and they win 13 games, it's going to be very hard to keep that award away from Nick Sirianni.
I totally agree with you on that. I do like Mike McDaniel at this point, though. Again, I said this last time. Like, I love when I look at the Dolphins that their wins, they did them in 3 different ways. And that's a lot due to a coach and how the style that he's coaching and the way he's setting up his team for success in different scenarios against teams that have different strengths. So I really love that about Mike McDaniel in his first year with the Dolphins. We'll see if that continues again. I'll be sold after this week. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year, Depoy, for a second. Aaron Donald at 14-1 or Nick Bosa also at 14-1. They're both 3-4 in the odds game right now when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year. Which way you leaning?
If I have to pick one of these guys, man, this is tough because they both play in the same division and they're both playing each other this week. Very, very tough. On the knife's edge, I would lean. I haven't, to be full disclosure, we didn't prep this segment a whole lot. We wanted it to kind of be natural and reactive. So I don't have like the stats in front of me for each guy. And my initial gut reaction when you mentioned those 2 names was neither. Frankly, I don't know if I don't know which team is going to have more success. I think both teams have flaws. I think Bosa, because of Donald though is right. I think Donald gets a lot of attention. So I think the hard thing, and this is why Tom Brady probably will never win another MVP, and same for Aaron Rodgers. when you've won a bunch of MVPs and Aaron's obviously won this award, it's hard to
Yeah.
win it again. Because again, you have to impress the voters, and voters are humans. They're stupid. They like to be impressed. They like to be tickled. I don't know if these guys, especially Aaron Donald, who's already won this award, are going to do something, extraordinary to win it again. I think he's won it multiple times, actually. Whereas I don't think Bosa's won it before. So I would lean Bosa in that spot. Just for the sake of, variety is the spice of life.
And I know everyone's going to say, okay, neither, because Micah Parsons is at 2-1 right now to be able to win it. He is the best defensive player in the league. He is probably the best player in the league. I don't know. Who knows at this point? But Myles Garrett is also up there at 6-1 odds ahead of Donald and Bosa. So something to keep in mind. But it's just a fun game. So what about
we're having fun. Would you rather?
Woo! Fun!
We should do a drinking game. We should have to take shots after each one, right?
I got coffee.
Espresso.
Ew, there's hair in my coffee. Gross. Oh, sorry about that. All right, let's move on to MVP. I know I'm done drinking that now. Pushing that away. Lamar Jackson at plus 550 or Patty Mahomes. It's 7-1 odds. They're number 2 and number 4 in odds. And then you also look at a guy like Jalen Hurts right now, which is plus 600. But let's go between Lamar and Patty Ice. Who are you leaning?
So here's the thing. Both of these guys have won this award before, recently. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, back-to-back. But before that, it was Lamar and it was Pete and it was Patty. So there is precedent for both. I'll be honest. I am not sold on the Ravens start. I'm not. I think there's a lot of holes to be poked in the overall team success that Baltimore's had. We saw the disaster that they suffered through against the Dolphins. We watched them beat a New England team that turned it over more times than your local bakery when you're going to buy the apple turnovers. And you look at Patrick Mahomes now, and you've got yourself a buy low scenario. He is arguably the best player in the league. I think you can make a case for 4 or 5 guys. I think both of these guys are in that discussion. But
the top.
They lost last week. His number dropped. The Ravens won. His number didn't drop. If anything, his number got higher. So I would say today, if I had to choose one, I would choose Mahomes, just because I put these guys on the same plane. And Mahomes, to me, better number, buy low.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Josh Allen is still number 1 at 3-1 odds. Jalen Hurts, 6-1. Justin Herbert, number 5, 16-1. And Tua's up there now, 17-1 odds to win the MVP this season. He's the number 6 choice at this point. So we'll see if some of these teams are the real deal. The Ravens taking on the Bills. I think that's going to be a big challenge for them too. I have one more would you rather, and this has nothing to do with football, but I saw it on Bill's TikTok this morning. Would you rather have traffic cones for legs or Cheetos for fingers? The Bills posted that this morning. I know. Go look it. It's on the Bills TikTok page. Traffic cones for legs or Cheetos for fingers. And Josh Allen goes, Cheetos, of course. It was funny.
But then you would eat your fingers, and then you'd have no more fingers. Do they grow back?
A lot of guys said, though, that you want to have mobility. At least you can still move. Like, fingers are phalanges. You could get rid of them and still be okay. Maybe not.
Yeah, good luck throwing a football with Cheetos for fingers, Josh. Good luck, bud.
Well, good luck running. Good luck making some of those running plays and hurdling players.
Yeah, neither of those options sounds great. How about this? Can I go back in time and go to the Blue Jays game last night and sit in that spot where that poor soul missed the home run for Aaron Judge?
Oh my God!
Did you see that last night?
Of course,
hold on. There was a, well, I know you did. I'm asking our audience. There was a story. There was a story that was posted about him. His name is Frankie Lasagna, and he owns an Italian restaurant. I swear you can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. They did a whole story on him in one of the Toronto newspapers. I feel awful for him. He came within like 6 inches of being a millionaire overnight. Worst bad beat of the year. Sorry, bud. Sorry,
How did that happen?
He missed. He just missed it. It was. See, but here's the thing. If he would have dove and jumped, he might have A, died. It was a long drop down to the bullpen. But B, there was like 10 relief pitchers right there that were catching the ball. Like, even if he jumped, he wasn't getting that ball. It's just the fates decided that he wasn't going to be a millionaire. It just went under his glove. Very, very disappointing for him, though.
Yeah, and then Aaron Judge
Probably a
takes
rough
the
night
ball
for
and
him.
gives it to his mom. Really cute. They
So
don't have to
cute.
pay anything for it. Pretty
No.
incredible. Yeah, good for Aaron Judge, by the way. We didn't mention it off the top of the show, but so excited for
Yeah.
him. All these teams need to offer him a blank check because at this point he deserves it. It's going to be interesting to see off season what happens with Aaron Judge, but it's fun to watch. We have 1 week left, or a couple days left, I guess, in the regular season for Major League Baseball before postseason begins. Pumped to see it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some college football. We have the week 5 slate. There's a few teams that have maybe a little something to prove, but which team has the most to prove this week? Let's start in the ACC. We have Florida State taking on Wake Forest. That spread right now is set at 7. Wake Forest is laying the 7 points, coming off of a double overtime loss to Clemson. DJU was able to take advantage of their secondary. Now Jordan Travis coming in here. He wants to do the same thing, and he's been pretty accurate this season. He's led the team to a 4-0 start, but the rushing game definitely needs to help him out. But they want to prove that they're the best team in the ACC because guess what? After this week for Florida State, they go and play at NC State, and then the week after, or I think they go and play NC State and they go and play at Clemson the week after that. So it's pretty 2 grueling weeks after this week against Wake Forest. They want to be undefeated heading into those 2 games. This is a big game for them. I think that they do have a lot to prove here. How do you feel?
Yeah, you're right. At NC State next week, home against Clemson the following week. A very tough gauntlet here. The ACC gauntlet, right in the middle of it for Florida State. So I did a deep dive on this game. There's a few things to keep in mind. I did bet Florida State 6.5 earlier this week. I got ahead of that number. I'm probably going to hold on to it. If it gets to 7.5, and we'll talk about my middle attempt tomorrow night with Washington and UCLA. If it gets to 7.5, I might come back on Wake. But listen, the hurricane is going to be a factor in this game. This game's being played in Tallahassee. We don't know what the weather's going to be like on Saturday. We don't know what the field conditions are going to be like on Saturday. Right now in Florida, I called my mom yesterday. She's on the other side of the state. It's bad on that side of the state too. It's obviously worse on the the west side, the Gulf side, but the entire state of Florida right now is getting hammered pretty hard. So keep that in mind. This game's in Tallahassee. What's the weather going to be like this week? And this is a letdown spot for the Deacs. You mentioned that double overtime loss to Clemson. The analytics say they should have won that game. So you're even more upset that you had Clemson on the ropes. You had a chance to win, and you couldn't quite close the deal in double overtime. Florida State's been a positive surprise this year. When I look at them across the board, I don't see a ton of weaknesses, especially on offense. They've got talent all over the field, skill position, running backs, wide receivers. Their offensive line's also improved. Jordan Travis is playing like a top 10, top 20 quarterback.
He's playing well.
And the Knowles offense is top 20 in most offensive category. I mean, they look legit. They look like a Florida State team of old that really has a lot of talent, and that talent with Mike Norvell is finally starting to play up to their potential. On the other side of the ball, this will be the toughest test for Florida State's defense. So far this year, they faced Duquesne, LSU, Louisville, who's solid, and Boston College. Not a ton there. Now they get this slow mesh offense with the Sam Hartman, and I think that the tempo is going to be a factor. They're a little thin on the defensive line. Wake will tempo you to death. Last year in this game between Wake and Florida State, the Demon Deacons ran 54 plays in the first half. Tempo. Can Florida State withstand that? And, with their defensive injuries and still be fresh, at the end of the game? We'll see. To me, Sam Hartman is the assassin here. He was pressured on 50% of dropbacks against Clemson and still had an 81% adjusted accuracy rate. That's insane. Clemson's defensive line is one of the best in the country, and he was getting waves of dudes just thrown at him throughout the game, and he still had an 81% adjusted accuracy rate. Impressive stuff for Sam Hartman. I think it's 6.5. You lay it with the Knowles, but at 7, it's probably a stay away. At 7.5, the value probably flips back to Wake because a lot of games have landed 7 this year. But this is gonna be a fun game. I'm excited to watch this one.
Yeah, another game I'm excited to watch, and a team that I think has a lot to prove at this point is Kansas in the Big 12. They are the only undefeated team in the Big 12 at this point. People are kind of still writing them off, including maybe us a little bit, but maybe not. I mean, they have 4 wins: Tennessee Tech, West Virginia, Houston, and then Duke last week. They've been scoring points. But now they're actually set to face an actual run defense in Iowa State because they haven't seen a real run defense yet. Iowa State is 7th in the nation at this point against the run. They're only allowing 2.7 yards per carry. And I know Jalen Daniels needs to take advantage through the air going up against a team that has as good of a run defense as Iowa State does. And they've been really good as a team on third downs, but you said that too when we were talking in our NFL segment. The third down efficiency is a little scary of a stat, but they are converting 67% of the time. That's second in the nation behind Minnesota at this point. It's for Kansas and me, it's the defense that worries me a little bit. They give up a lot of points, but the offense usually holds it together. I mean, they've scored 56, 55, 48, and 35 respectively over the last 4 games. And that's how they've won these games. Going up against a good defense like Iowa State, this is going to be the first real test for a team like Kansas to prove who they are and that they deserve to be at the top of the Big 12. Don't you agree?
Totally agree with your handicap there. Very, very solid handicap there. 6 for 10. That's what Kansas was on third downs against Duke. And I watched every one of them because I was on Duke plus 7.5 and Kansas won by 8. Not a great result for me. And I was of the belief that Kansas was a sell high. And I still am of that belief. This is an Iowa State team that I think is a lot better than people think. They finally got the monkey off their back beating Iowa. They hadn't beaten Iowa in like a gajillion years. And what do the following week? They kind of lay an egg against Baylor. Now, Baylor's tough. We've talked about Baylor this year. Dave Aranda's a hell of a coach. Yeah. That defense is legit. Their offense, it played really well last week against Iowa State. And I think the Hawkeyes maybe were, I don't want to say they were looking ahead to Kansas. I think that's, a bridge too far. But I do think that was a letdown spot for Iowa State. After beating Iowa, they kind of relax a little bit, and Baylor comes into, where do they play? Ames? Yeah, Ames. Baylor went into Ames last week. I've been to Ames. There's not much there. That's why I forgot the name.
I've never been. I honestly didn't even know that was a city, to be honest with you.
I forgot the name of Ames. Got my bars today, yo. Iowa State's going to win this game. Yeah. Woo! Iowa State's going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it by more than a field goal. Let's just leave it at that. Listen, Kansas has been all the rage. This has been all the rage. They're 4-0 against the spread this year. They're covering the spread by an average of 17.5 points. Hard to really poke holes in that number. But I think you made a very solid point about the third downs and some of those volatile statistics that really are the difference between scoring points and not scoring points. 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 plays throughout the course of the game for Kansas have been very positive on third downs. Like I said, they went 6 for 10 on third downs against Duke. That's not sustainable. Like they're not going to go 60% on third downs every week. It's not going to happen. So I think that's where you see a little bit of regression coming from Kansas.
67%, almost 70% on third down.
That's regression time. The average I would say is probably in the country around 40%. That's probably where they're going to be at towards the end of the year, my guess.
And if they win this game, they're proving a lot of people wrong and that they deserve now to be in that race for the top spot in the Big 12. Because right now they're the only undefeated team. They haven't really faced anyone. Iowa State, the first real defense that they're going up against. It's going to be interesting to see if Kansas's offense can continue to kind of hold their team together the way that they have been over these last 4 weeks when their defense can't stop my freaking grandma from running the ball at this point. Hi, Graham. Love ya. Okay, one more game to look at, and 2 teams that I think both have something to prove at this spot. Clemson taking on NC State. I honestly think the ACC comes down to Clemson, NC State, Florida State. It's the Atlantic Division that is the powerhouse, and that always has been the powerhouse, but is the absolute powerhouse this year. This is the first time that these 2 teams have both faced each other, both being in the AP top 10, which is really, really exciting. So I'm pumped to see this. Sam Hartman is a really good quarterback. But still, he passed for 6 touchdowns last week. Clemson's secondary looked horrendous. And I know Devin Leary has some solid numbers for NC State. But watching him last week, I was on the sidelines, and they're playing against UConn, and there's still some of these passes that I'm like, it's not as accurate as he wants it to be. He needs to tighten up with some of these throws that he's making. But Clemson also hasn't lost a home game since 2016, which is pretty crazy. They have like a win streak of 30-plus wins at home. NC State, though, is first in the ACC and 6th in FBS with a 94.7 pass efficiency defense rating. when they're going up against a guy like DJU, their secondary is going to be extremely important in a spot like this. And they're phenomenal. Let me tell you, all three of their linebacking core finally back together. They've played 2 weeks together now at this point, and this is the first time the three guys have played together in like 2+ years, all extremely healthy, and you see what they're able to do. This is a battle of two top teams, top 10 teams in the country, battle of the two top teams in the ACC. They both have something to prove at this point, and right now the spread is set at 6.5.
Yeah, so Clemson had a few key injuries in the secondary against Wake. And from what I'm hearing, they're trending in a positive direction this week. I forget their names off the top of my head, but I was reading that there's some guys in the secondary that if they do come back this week and they're healthy, massive boost. Because you're right. We both watched that game against Wake on Saturday. It was ugly. Clemson was getting roasted and toasted in that game in the back. Now, listen, you give a little credit to Sam Hartman, who was making like ridiculous throws in that game. And I was on Clemson. I laid the 7 with Clemson in that game. And I was just like sitting there on my couch, just like, how is Sam Hart? Like, it was like unbelievable. Like I said, we just talked about the Wake Forest game. He was pressured on half of his dropbacks and still had an 80%, accuracy rate. Sam Hartman was insane in that game. I don't know if Devin Leary, as you said, you got a very close look at him last week. I don't know if Devin Leary is going to be able to make those throws. So the numbers are telling me a very similar story to what you just painted. Devin Leary has not graded out well this year. 5.3 yards per attempt against Texas Tech, 7.3 against UConn, the game you covered. The one thing I will say, he's 18th out of 141 quarterbacks on play action. That is important. Why? To me, if I'm Dave Doran and I'm looking at Clemson's defensive line and I'm a running team and I'm trying to get Devin Leary involved, I'm going early down play action because Clemson's obviously going to be gearing up for the run. The hurricane also will be a factor in this game. Any college football game or NFL game played in the southeastern region this weekend will likely be impacted by weather in some way or another. Some games more than others, but this weekend more than any other weekend, take extra time and attention to the weather forecast. It is going to be there's a freaking Category 4 hurricane barreling up the coast right now. The weather will be a factor this weekend in the southeast part of the country.
Meteorologist Gerard. Meteorologist
Get
Gerard.
out the Doppler radar, baby. This is the weekend that Jabara's Doppler finally shines.
Freaking love the Doppler radar more than anyone else in the world. But I will say, if Clemson doesn't tighten up their secondary, they're going to get crushed this week. I know DJU is really good. I don't think that he's going to have as big of an impact against this NC State defense because let me tell you, watching them on TV, great. Watching them in person last week, I'm like, damn, this secondary that the NC State Wolfpack have, they are really, really, really good. Their defense is really, really, really good. And I think they're going to be able to put pressure on DJU. And when he makes those passes, when he's trying to get out of pressure, they're going to be able to pick him off. I think he's going to throw maybe 2 interceptions. I know it's a bold statement, but I just have a really good feeling about their defense. Devin Leary needs to be more accurate than he was last week. He needs to be more accurate than he was in the last few weeks. But with the way that Clemson secondary is playing right now, he could take advantage, maybe not even being at 100% his best. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to go up against each other. Both teams have a lot to prove at this point. And then guess what? NC State's playing Florida State next week. So between those 3 teams, I'm definitely going to be having my eyes on the ACC. All right, Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports, guys. Go to Superbook. On any spread or any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. So make sure to visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. All right, we're visiting Pickswise.com now to get into our 3-star play of the day. Gerard, who do we got? Pickswise.com, 3-star play of the day before we get into our best bets.
Well, Club TA actually has a very good, it's kind of funny. I wasn't going to bet this Bengals game, but Clef TA has a 3-star play on the site right now for the Miami Dolphins Cincinnati Bengals game that looks very intriguing. It looks very intriguing, and I think I might bet it because not only does it give me some exposure to this game tonight, which I wanted, but it also doesn't directly conflict with your play of the day, which I think is something I was trying to avoid tonight. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Go to the site and check it out. But like I said, Clev TA has been that dude for us this year, handicapping the Thursday and the Monday night games. He's so sharp, he's not even going to reveal his full name to us on the site. He goes by Clev TA. That's how sharp he is. Doesn't even want his real name given out because people would reach out to him for picks and all kinds of other stuff. So there you go. Clev TA
Bring out that pencil
on the site tonight.
sharpener.
3-star
Get
play.
the perfect point because he is that sharp, baby. He is that sharp. All right, let's get into our best bets of the day. Speaking of Thursday Night Football, I'll go first with mine. I really like the Dolphins and the points in this spot, plus 3.5. I know this is considered a letdown spot, and we talked about this a lot yesterday on Pickswise Playbook. I don't think it will be. I know Tua is dealing. Wow, combine those two words. Tua is dealing with some injuries, bumps, bruises. They just beat the Bills last week in extreme heat, who are favored to win the division and the Super Bowl at this point. But I love how Mike McDaniel is coaching this team in his first season there. They look really good on both sides of the ball every single week. This year, they've won in a different way. Week 1, physical game. Week 2, offense. Massive fourth quarter against the Ravens when the defense didn't necessarily have their best week. And last week, the defense held the Bills to a 50% red zone conversion rate. They didn't allow them to score a touchdown in the second half. I love how the Dolphins are playing right now. I love the chemistry between Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, and I just love what they're cooking down there in Miami. And you know me, and if you guys have been watching the show since last year, I am the biggest Joe Burrow fan. I loved the Bengals. I bought the glasses. No one is more of a Joe Burrow fan than Jabara, okay? I'm just not bought into them yet this season. They won against the Jets last week, and everyone's like, yes, they're finally in the win column. It's the Jets. The Jets turned the ball over 4 times, and the Bengals scored 13
Go easy on my Jets, Jabara.
I'm sorry. But the Jets turned the ball over
I'm kidding. They
4
suck.
times. Yeah, they suck. It's okay. I'm a Lions fan. I'm sorry. It's okay. They
forever cursed.
The Lions had like a 2-touchdown lead, and they still lost last week. So you know what? I don't want to hear it. But the Dolphins are not. It's true. The Dolphins are not going to be giving up the ball as much as the Jets. Okay. Twist the knife, please. Twist the knife. The Dolphins are not going to be giving up the ball as much as the Jets did last week. Also, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle have been so solid. And I look at the Bengals numbers. They ranked last in the NFL in yards per play with 4.5, where Miami is tied for the second highest yards per play in the NFL. And also the Dolphins are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 following a win. So give me the Dolphins and the points going up to Cincy. They're going to eat some of that Skyline chili, and they're going to be running all over that field against the Bengals. I feel good about it. Why not?
Yeah, it looks like you might get a 4 later too. Maybe. You might get and again, I don't know what the market's going to do. We'll see when these injuries get announced tonight, who plays and who doesn't play. But I would say there's a coin flips chance a 4 pops up in the market before game time. So I think, obviously, we're doing the show at 10 a.m. Eastern. We have to give you the pick now. But I would say that there is a chance that you might get a 4 tonight. That's just food for thought. So I am going to the Nerfy well tonight. I'll be honest. I know. And listen, I was going to give out the Bengals 3.5. Lauren and I powwowed before the show. It didn't make sense for us to give out conflicting plays of the day. I do think the Bengals win this game, but I think the odds are probably fair. And I think at 3.5, it's not a great bet because let's be honest, 15% of the games land on 3. So odds are this game could land on 3. And that's why 3.5, I don't think is a great bet. I was talking to a professional better before the show about buying it onto 3 and laying minus 130. He said that's a bad bet, not a great move. So that's not an option. And I didn't feel great about laying the hook. So I think at 3.5 on the plus side, Miami's probably the better bet to make. All right, Nerfy time. Tampa Bay, Cleveland tonight. We're talking about in Ohio. We got 2 games in Ohio tonight. Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Guardians, baby. All right, Jeffrey Springs, Cal Quantrill, 44-9 to the Nerfy this year. That is an 83% hit rate. That is and only 44 combined plate appearances. Combined Combined plate appearances against the opposing lineup. Quantrill especially has been really good against this Tampa lineup. Springs has allowed a home run to Jose Ramirez. That scares me a little bit. I would say Jose Ramirez is the only guy in the top half, or excuse me, in the bottom half of the first inning that can wreck this handicap for me. But Ramirez has been kind of scuffling lately. And now we throw in the weather in Cincinnati tonight and Cleveland. It's definitely football weather. Temperature is around 50 degrees. The wind is blowing in from right field about 10 miles an hour. That negates the left-handed hitter's home run a little bit. Jose Ramirez is a lefty. Most of his home runs go to right field. So while the weather forecast isn't overly impactful in this game, I think it's a little more difficult to hit a home run in 50-degree weather with the wind blowing in. Cleveland's not really conducive to long fly balls in September and October, and we're almost in October right now. So overall, these lineups, too, are very poor. I love the handicap with these lineups because Cleveland's scoreless in 5 straight games in the first inning. Tampa Bay scoreless in 4 straight. These two teams played a 1-1 game yesterday that went into extras. Cleveland won 2-1 in extras. So there hasn't been a ton of run scoring in this series. And Tampa Bay overall on the road, just a 22% hit rate in the first inning. Cleveland 29% at home. That's, average to below average. So we get slightly above average pitchers, slightly below average lineups, and we're laying about 35 cents at Caesars. Not a bad price there. I don't mind it if you're getting 40 or 50, but I would be a little bit more hesitant to lay 40 or 50 cents. Minus 135, I would say, is a dividing line here for me. So Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Nerfy, minus 135. Play of the day.
I like it. Lock it in, lock it up, baby. It is Thursday night football. Thursday night football. Let's go. That's it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. Best of luck tonight. Let's bet it. Presented by Superbook Sports. We'll see you all tomorrow.